Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Miranda. I am your Enchantress of Avalon and I will be taking you on a journey today into the lands mystical and especially into Avalon. And for today's topic, I decided to choose the relationship between Guinevere and Morgan Le Fay. They obviously are the two most important female figures in the entire Arthurian canon, and they also are usually depicted as rivals, and for good reason. And I wanted to kind of unpack that today and also explain why I've always felt a connection to both of these women. Morgan Le Fay more so. She is the stronger and more intellectual of the two, and certainly the way more magical of the two. But they both have magical connections if you go back far enough, and that's what we're going to be digging into today. So let's begin. Firstly, both Morgan Le Fay and Guinevere have origins in sovereignty goddesses and fairy queens, and origins that could connect them back to the Isle of Avalon. Both are represented throughout several Arthurian tales as being representatives of the goddess of sovereignty. Guinevere is a very obvious representative of the goddess of sovereignty in being the classic archetypal flower bride. This is something that I've already discussed at length in my Blittlewith video, where a flower bride is the symbol of the goddess of sovereignty, a representative of her, coming forth to marry a king. And that's what really cements his relationship to his land, his relationship to his kingdom, and his right to rule. I didn't know how to phrase that, but it cements his right to rule. Without this marriage being in place, that would not end well, and his right to rule would be in jeopardy. And that, in fact, is something that we could say happens, and why Camelot falls is that the relationship between Arthur and Guinevere breaks down. Guinevere takes a new lover in Lancelot, and this is the passing of the torch. This is the goddess leaving Arthur to go to another. Similarly, though, we have Morgan Le Fay, who is most often shown as the Dark Lady of Sovereignty, the Dark Lady of Knowledge. And she uses this ability to test Arthur and his knights over and over and over again. This is as important, if not more so, than having the flower bride. That marriage to the land is always integral to these stories. However, without being tested, how do you know you had any right to begin with? And that's something that we see over and over again in Morgan's tales. And if we see Morgan as being one of the many ladies of the lake, and also possibly the ladies of the lake are just aspects of her to begin with, we see her possibly in the earliest tales that we no longer have written records of, or never had written records of. The Lady of the Lake likely was the one that fostered Arthur in his unknown childhood. It was later attributed to his fosterage with Sir Ector of the Forest Sauvage, and that is how he was fostered when Merlin took him. But considering Merlin is a magical figure, Merlin has connections to the Ladies of the Lake and to Avalon through his magical nature. It makes a lot of sense that he would give Arthur into fostership by the Ladies of the Lake. And if we think of Morgan as being an aspect of this, she could have been the fosterer of Arthur. And there are versions where she's not his sister and is instead, there are versions where she is a lover after he dies and comes to Avalon and he is healed and awaiting to become the once and future king. She is his consort in Avalon, his underworldly consort. there are versions where this is the case. Those versions predate the versions that attribute her as being his sister. So could that be possibly why in later tellings we have this incest between Arthur and a sister? First, it was Morgause, who goes by many names. She's also known as Anna and Morcades. But that, mother of Mordred with Arthur as the father, got transferred eventually to Morgan herself as being the adulterous one, the adulterous sister, and the incestuous sister who had this relationship with Arthur to beget Mordred. And in that aspect, she's also the motherly figure of sovereignty. She is when she's fostering Arthur or fostering knights to test their ability to become leaders and to be true knights of the Round Table. She is doing this in fostering young warriors in Avalon. Lancelot himself was fostered by the Lady of the Lake. That has never been disputed. That's always been part of the Arthurian mythos. And then later we have her as the mother of Mordred. So we see her in that dark, motherly, nurturing, sovereignty figure aspect. And as the lover, she also can be embodying more of the lover, maiden-turned-lover aspect as well. And in that way, Morgan, throughout the mythos, can embody every aspect of sovereignty, pretty much, in a way that Guinevere doesn't. Guinevere is securely rooted in the flower bride, light aspect of sovereignty, never the dark. Except when she has an adulterous relationship, but even then, it is seen through the lens of this sovereignty passing out of Arthur because of this. And why do they clash? Well, they are both goddess figures in their own right. They were both goddesses, and they represent different aspects, rival aspects, the light and the dark. While those things balance each other, they can also clash if not handled properly. That's why balance is so important, and that's why understanding the full scope of things is so important. And in later tales, we usually have this clash happening because of love gone wrong. We have Morgan, who, after being forced to marry a man she never loved, is finally able to find love. And usually it's Guiomar, who was either a nephew or a cousin of Guinevere's. And Guinevere was insulted by the fact that Morgan would cheat on King Urien and said, yep, nope, I'm sending him away. So she did, and he left. In other versions, it is Accolon that she separates from Morgan. In the version where it's Guiomar, Morgan meets Accolon later, and they do have a love story, and then Accolon is killed. And then, of course, in even more modern tellings, we have it because of a rivalry over Lancelot. Because Morgan loved Lancelot, so did Guinevere. Lancelot only loved Guinevere. So Morgan, in this fit of jealousy and rage, hates Guinevere. It could be, sure, but I think that's an oversimplification and a desire to have a twisted, tragic love triangle more than anything else. And it's more common in, modern literary tropes than it was to the older mythos and to the Celtic ties. Guinevere, in her Celtic ties, though, it should be noted that not only is she the flower bride, but she has this aspect of being the flower bride who is fought over by a figure representing the Lord of Summer and a figure representing the Lord of Winter. And I said this was the same thing in Blittlewith. She was fought over by a solar figure and a dark figure. So that's, summer and winter. And this can be seen as a seasonal sovereignty concept, where that right of rule passes seasonally. And it certainly was something that the Celts saw in aspect of how they worshipped. There were figures that could be worshipped more so in the summer, figures more so in the winter, especially when it comes to the gods. The goddesses were, since they were sovereignty figures for the most part, and fairy goddess figures, fairy queens, they ruled over the whole system, the whole of the year. But the gods were associated very much so with the light half of the year, the dark half of the year. So it would kind of pass through a cycle. And it's all about that cyclic change, that birth, death, rebirth cycle. And we see this when Guinevere is kidnapped and has to be rescued. She is rescued by a solar figure, or she is rescued by a dark figure, who is the opposite of the solar figure. In the earliest versions, she is taken away to by the king of the summer lands, so a solar figure, rescued by Arthur, who in this case is taking on the mantle of the darker winter figure. And in other versions, that is flipped, and she is taken away by a winter figure and needs a solar figure to come and rescue her. So this is in line with our classic flower bride representation of the goddess of sovereignty and representatives of the goddess of sovereignty. So, as I've said, these connections are numerous and there's so many layers to it. This is why we have Guinevere and Morgan against each other. Morgan was betrayed in love. Guinevere was lucky in love. But Morgan was able to do something Guinevere never could, and that was be a mother. In some versions, Guinevere does get to be mother, but they are rare, and they are only in the very oldest of texts, and we don't ever see her referred to as a mother. We will see a reference to Arthur having a legitimate child, so it has to be assumed that his queen is the mother. That is all. And in those versions, usually the son dies young. Whereas Morgan is known to have at least one, if not two, children, and is also known as a fostering, initiative goddess figure. And it must be noted that there are also figures that are associated with both of them in their goddess aspects and can sometimes pass between them. Gawain starts out defending Guinevere in early texts, but then, especially after the Green Knights situation happens, and if you don't know what that is, please watch my video on the Green Knight, he passes over into Morgan's care. He is now a representative of Morgan because she tested him and deemed him worthy. So that's where I'm going to bring this video to a close. I hope that you have enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, and check out my blog, whiteroseofavalon.life, for more content. And in the description, I'm going to list some other sources if you want to dig into this deeper. Have a great day, and I hope I will see you next Sunday. Bye.